There are so many ways to incorporate whipping, also called lacing, with your chain stitch. Here I've used the whipping to add beads around near the edge of two different quilts. So let's look at the basics of doing the whipping with chain stitch. You actually have two options. I'm coming up, usually I like to chain stitch this way, and then I turn it so that I can stitch left to right or right to left, depending on which hand I'm using. So I'm coming up underneath the line right by the end of my, or beginning of my chain stitch, depending on how you want to describe it. So I've got a tapestry needle so I don't catch, because I don't want to go under the fabric. I just want to go under the threads. So with the basic whipping or lacing action, you're always passing the needle in the same direction. So in this case, I'm always going top to bottom, and I'm going under both of the threads. So that's one option. You can see it's just a way to add a little bit of color. It does flatten the stitches down a bit, and you can vary that depending on how much your tension is, but just keep in mind, don't make it too loose. Another way, now I wouldn't switch in the middle of a line of stitching, but another option, because this is a closed loop, you can whip inside the loop. And you'll notice that this is now going to give an asymmetrical look. It's placing it more on just on one side. You can always come back and whip it on the other side if you like. Now something else you can do is you can whip these two rows of chain stitches together. So I've come up inside the bottom row, and now I'll just go into both loops. And so this is going to whip them together. It could make a nice fancy border. I used it in a little, this is just a little sample to show how you could make something like a tree that you could add, you could just make it look a little bit more solid, but give it kind of a texture of bark and use some different colors of thread in there. So it's just an easy way to get a different effect. Now if I'm stitching it left-handed, I'm still going to come below the line, but I'm just going left to right. And it's the same principle. I'm always passing, from above to below. This time I'm going around the stitches. Here's the effect that you get. When you get the more asymmetrical effect, you're just going with the lacing inside the chains. So those are the basics. Now you can also do this with a bead if you want to add beads. Now in this case, I have options as far as what color thread I want to use. I chose to have 2 strands of DMC floss that are going to be a match for my pearl cotton. That's a size 8 pearl cotton. And the tricky thing about this, when you decide to use a smaller bead, is that you don't have the option of a tapestry needle, so you have to be careful. This is a pointier needle, but you can still manage it. I have it's a size 9 or 10 embroidery needle because I need something that small to go through my beads. So I just pick up a bead and I'm going to go under. In this case, this is going to wrap the first stitch, so I'm going under the second stitch. Oops, my bead fell off. Great. Let's try that again. Was not paying attention. All right, now my bead's on. And you can see then that's going to snug the bead down over the line of chain stitches. I really like the way this makes the bead kind of sit in the chain stitch. So right now I'm wrapping around the whole stitch. you can try to finesse where you get these beads to go. They're going to go where they want to go, no matter how much you try to finesse it. There's a spot in the chain stitch that's where they're going to sit. So I hope you have fun experimenting with different sizes of beads with this. One thing to keep in mind is you want something that is proportionate with the, just keep in mind the proportion. I could put a great big bead over these stitches, but they would really get lost, especially if the stitches would really get lost. Here I've got a size 5 pearl cotton and a smaller bead relative to the size of pearl cotton. So you see both the bead and the stitches equally. This one, you see the beads more. It just depends on what effect you're trying to go for.